sorry.
You've caught us in the middle of a meal.
Am I still?
It's too Welcome, everyone.
Welcome
to Two Girls, One Ghost.
Two Girls, One Ghost. We are your ghostesses. That is Corinne.
Hello.
And I am Sabrina. We are your witch hosts of the evening.
And as you can tell, we are in the middle of the woods in our cabin.
Mm-hmm. And
where we
just
feast on body parts
of young lost wanderers who happen upon our cabin looking for some solace. Instead, we have for them some salt.
But we also have ghost stories for you.
We're fun, creepy aunts in the woods. This is an Encounters episode of Two Girls, One Ghost.
Yep.
And this spooky October season, we've decided to come to you from where we spend our days.
Dwelling in my basement.
Should I start?
Sure.
Okay.
Also, Sven has been resurrected from the dead as the dead still.
Still dead, but back. And a little bit bigger.
Yeah, his body parts have been rejoined.
Mm-hmm.
He traveled all across the United States to find where his missing body pieces were post-tour.
They were on Amazon.
Yeah, and they were he
sale.
shipped himself to us to return.
He was very happy to be back with us. So this evening or afternoon or early morning or wherever you are is a spooky, very spooky episode of Encounters where we read stories sent from you to you.
to
you.
From me, love me.
Okay, I have one from our listener, Madison, and it is called 3 Years of Headless Ghosts. Hey girls, I just came across your podcast about a week ago and have not stopped listening, but boy, do I have a story for you. When I was 7, my dad was married to this woman named Crystal. She was pregnant with my younger sister. My older sister and I really couldn't care less. But a couple months after my little sister was born, events started happening.
Mm.
I believe this is because of what my father had done to Crystal.
Uh-oh.
My little sister was a last resort for Crystal and for their relationship. She had miscarried several times and never got to term in previous relationships. Her and my dad were on the brink of divorce when she begged him to at least give her a kid. He was her last hope, and it worked. She was pregnant, carried to term, and 6 months later, he got caught cheating and tried to end the relationship. Crystal denied that due to the fact that my little sister was only 6 months old and that he should stay for a little bit longer for her. He did, but he continued to cheat.
Mm.
That is when everything started. It's already a horror.
I know.
We decided to move, and while we were packing, my little sister slept in her crib. Eventually, Crystal went to go check on her and found that the door was locked. So no one could open the door, even with a key. My dad tried to kick down this flimsy door, but it was not going anywhere. My sister came running over with a bobby pin, put it into the lock, and tried to pick it, and immediately, it unlocked. The door swung open, and we all saw a dark shadow standing over the crib, staring in at my little sister who was sleeping.
Ooh.
It faded out extremely fast, and Crystal ran to the crib. There was no activity in the new house after the move, but a year after that, my dad told Crystal their relationship was done. He found someone else, and she was moving in. He had known this girl for 2 weeks. The second she moved in, events started happening again. Shadows here and there. You couldn't hang things on the walls or on the stairwells because they would get knocked down, almost as if someone was running down the stairs, dragging their hand down the wall. Furniture would also rearrange if we were out. That same year, I broke my arm in several places and was knocked out on pain meds sleeping on the couch. During this, my older sister went to leave home and made a get well soon card and put it on my door. My door was at the end of the hallway with no window and no light, so it was super, super dark. She got this bad feeling of being watched and hesitated going down that hall. And then something pushed her. She ran to my door, put the note on the floor, and turned around. The second she turned around, she was met with a floating head.
Oh my God.
No body, just a head, eyes black. She screamed, shut her eyes, and ran down to the couch where I was. We ended up seeing this ghost another time. a few months later. But I will get to that soon. Later that summer, we were playing karaoke in my sister's room, and I heard this child's voice singing along with us. We turned around, and no one was there. It was just her bed, and there was no one on it. Then her door slammed shut as if someone went running out. My sister and I jumped. We went to the open door, and across from her door was the bathroom door, so when you opened the door, you're immediately met with a bathroom mirror. We opened the door, and in the mirror, we saw our reflections. But there was also a tall, dark shadow reflection standing behind us in the reflection.
Fuck, no.
My older sister saw the shadow several more times, but only in reflections. This same summer, we were going downstairs and saw my dad turn the corner into his room. He was wearing a red hoodie. So we went running back up the stairs to talk to him, and he was nowhere to be found. We were confused. And even more confusing, he was asleep on the couch downstairs. We told the new girlfriend, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I've seen that. It's harmless."
What? Did she bring it?
Harmless my ass. The next summer came around. My little sister is walking around and finally knows how to go up and down stairs and run. So she comes up to my room and bugs me. But as she's walking down that dark hallway, she walks under the big ceiling vent. She heard a noise and looked up to find a face watching her from inside the vent.
So many faces.
Well, so that sounds like someone's living in the walls.
Right.
She runs to my room, bangs on the door to have me let her in. I sit up from my bed, confused, and then I truly got pushed off my bed.
This is a lot of aggression. This is a lot of, there's a lot going on here. I don't know why I keep waiting for the moment where it's like, and then we figured out it was my Uncle Joe and he's actually my guardian angel.
I don't think we're going to get that in any of these stories today.
That's true.
She comes running in, crying. I look down the hall, and I too see this floating head at the edge of the darkness in the hall. It never passed the light from the staircase. Slowly and shakingly, I walked over to my sister's room, never breaking eye contact with the head. Her door was shut, but I went to knock, and I noticed all of a sudden it opened. My sister was at her desk with her back turned. I whispered her name, and she turned around and saw us scared shitless. So she came over and was like, "What?" She too joins us in the hall and sees the head floating at the end of the hallway. Freaked out, she pulls the two of us into her room. We shut the door so fast and put a chair under the handle. And then the door starts banging and knocking and shaking as if something on the outside is trying to get in. We're all crying. And all of a sudden, it stopped.
Just like that?
Just then, the moment it stopped, like in every scary movie, the phone rang. We all jumped up to go see who it was, and it was Crystal, frantically asking if we were all okay. She immediately started praying for us and for our safety and said that whatever was in the house was not welcome. And the feeling went away. The weird part was she was 80 miles away in her home when she called, but she had a feeling that something was wrong.
Wow. Crystal.
That was the last big event that happened, and we moved a couple years later and never experienced anything after that. But I believe that whatever spirits were in the house were not just in the house itself. I think they followed my dad and realized that children were not the issue, and so they never messed with us like that again. I think my dad is followed by something dark due to the things that he had done to us kids and his past partners. He's also not a believer, so I think someday something is going to happen to him and he'll have no choice but to believe.
I can't believe so much of this was focused on the kids and not him. But also he seems like the battery, why mess with the thing that's charging you as an evil entity?
And if he doesn't believe, I'm sure things did happen to him, but he was just like, I'll write it off.
Yeah.
And then the kids actually freaked out.
Well, how do you write off a floating head in front of you?
And it's there for so long.
Right.
Anyway, love the podcast. Madison.
Madison. Oh my God. Well, first of all, sorry that you had to live through all of that in a haunted house and with all of the things that were being brought in from your father that are not ideal for anyone to experience. But my God, what the fuck?
Also, I'm curious, did the head look like a man? And I know Madison said it had black eyes, like soulless eyes, but were there any other facial features or was it just a head? Was there hair?
And is it the same thing the entire time or are there just other sort of spirits cycling through? Because we have the shadow behind them in the mirror. We have the shadow lurking over the crib. But then we do have headless.
Right.
We just have floating heads all over the place.
And then someone in a hoodie.
Yeah, a doppelganger situation.
Right.
Unless this is one spirit that's just kind of like morphing and just choosing whatever they find to be most fearful to the people in the moment.
What if it
fear-inducing?
The dad's soul? Because we've talked about how shadow people are like potentially created from humans, that something chips off of them. Yeah. Is it possible that there's a part of him that's just being projected out there,
right,
and haunting them and haunting him?
That could make sense, especially since the red hoodie, they thought it was their dad at first.
Right.
Not to say all doppelgangers are just the person that haunting themselves or like a piece of them, but that is an interesting theory.
We don't know.
Madison, has anything else ever happened in any other place?
Yeah, please tell us.
Let us know.
Yeah.
I have a story called Facing My Childhood Demons, or Running Through Them, literally.
Oh.
Hello, ghostesses. I'm a big fan of the podcast and have been listening for several years now. I figured it was finally time to tell you ladies about my first paranormal experience, emphasis on first, and how it impacted my life. But first, I have to give you guys a little background about myself and my family. My family on my dad and my mom's side are both of Hispanic descent and are very religious. My maternal grandmother was actually the head pastor of a church that her and my grandpa built in Mexico till the day that she passed away.
That is so cool.
My grandmother was your typical feisty Latina, and she had such a beautiful soul. She was the matriarch of our family, and my older brother and I were very close with her growing up. My grandma was also a spiritual badass, if I may say so. When she wasn't being a saint or preaching at church, she was battling demons. People
Literally?
from all over Mexico would come to my grandma's church and beg her to cast out the demons that they believed were attached to them or were possessing their loved ones.
That is so cool.
I know. Many of these people admitted that they had played with Ouija boards or tried dabbling with black magic. And yes, my grandma performed exorcisms. I found out that she had actually been performing exorcisms for more than half of her life.
How do you get into that?
Right?
Just stumble into exorcisms.
I know. How cool. I guess if you're going to open a church, maybe that would be my only motivation actually for ever doing anything at the church, is like maybe I'll one day get to do an exorcism.
The Church of Exorcisms is our church. 2 Girls, 1 Ghost church.
Strictly exorcisms, nothing else. I found out that my grandmother was spiritually gifted and could even see dark entities. My mother even told me that when she was a little girl, she witnessed several exorcisms and one time witnessed a possessed woman slithering on the floors of my grandmother's church like a snake, and this woman began hissing at people. My mom even remembers that after some exorcisms, my grandma would have 3 bloody claw scratches and bruises all over her ribs and body. But my grandmother never backed down. She helped exorcise many, many people. My mom, on the other hand, was and still is terrified of anything paranormal and spooky. Can't say I blame her.
Yeah, especially if you grow up with that.
Yeah.
It is interesting.
You don't want to get into the family business, Mom?
It's so funny how I feel like children often turn to the opposite of their parents.
Yeah. This is literally Halloween Town.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
She wanted to be in the
wanted
mortal,
nothing to do with
Halloween Town. Growing up, my mom and dad took us to church every Sunday and never let us watch scary movies or even go trick-or-treating for Halloween. Anything that seemed dark or creepy was a big no in our household, especially since my mom had to see it. The worst of the worst. As my brother and I got older, we began getting more and more curious about all these things that are spooky. So we started watching spooky movies when my parents were home, and we found that we loved horror films, the paranormal, and basically everything our parents didn't like.
It is Halloween Town.
It really is. My brother began to watch more violent and dark movies, read violent and dark books, etc. as time went on. And it began to concern me, but I didn't really say anything to him, and that was a big mistake. I liked spooky things, but only to a certain extent. My mother and dad were not happy when they found out that we had been watching, and I kind of felt guilty, so I did stop watching some spooky stuff. And my brother, on the other hand, decided to hide his scary films and things from our parents before they could throw them out. Now that all of that is covered, I can finally tell you about my first encounter, which happened when I was about 10 or 11 years old. I can't remember when I first started seeing them, but I remember every time I went upstairs alone, I would see shadows run across my door or the hall by my door every so often. I figured it was just my imagination until I started to see these shadowy people almost every time I was alone upstairs.
Oh my gosh.
The shadow figures looked like the outline of a real person, but they were always blackish gray in color, and they were see-through, if that makes any sense. And I remember telling my dad about them and that I was scared to go upstairs alone, but he dismissed them as my overactive imagination. Thanks, Dad. One afternoon, my dad gave me my clean laundry to go put away in my upstairs bedroom. I was dreading going up the stairs, but I knew that I just had to. Now to understand what happened next, I'll have to give you a layout of our upstairs. When you go up the stairs, you have to immediately turn left to go towards the bedrooms and our upstairs game room. The right side of the top of the stairs is the door to our attic. If you continue past the game room on one side of the hall, you'll end up in a half circle of rooms. The closest room to your left was my brother's bedroom. The next, going clockwise, was my bedroom, and then the bathroom, and then lastly, my father's office. My father's office actually faces my brother's bedroom door, so as I was going into that room, I head straight back to my dresser that's against the back wall of my room. I squatted down and I began putting my socks away in their usual place in the bottom left-hand drawer. My heart was already pounding and my stomach was in a huge knot. And I failed to mention earlier that I could not only see these shadow people, but I could hear their hushed whispers too when they came around to just torture me.
What were they whispering about?
I don't know. Oh, wait, I think we're going to maybe find out. My back was facing my bedroom door when I began to hear the mumbled whispers behind me, and I knew that they were back. My heart sank. I tried to continue putting all my socks away, and I kept saying to myself, it's all in your head. They're not real. It's just your imagination. When suddenly, I heard what I can only describe as a whispery voice suddenly say my name right next to my ear. Kehlani. 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 Startled by how close and how fast this person had called to me, I dropped the remaining socks that I was holding. I whipped around to find a shadow man standing in my doorway, looking straight at me with glowing red eyes. Shocked and horrified, I stood there and I came to the horrific realization that this shadow person was not alone. Behind the shadow man was a line, yes, a line of shadow people.
I hate that.
Who were walking from my father's office into my brother's room. After making eye contact with me, the shadow man in my doorway, then turned away and returned to the line of shadow people and proceeded to enter my brother's room. I was absolutely petrified. I was frozen in fear. My nipples literally just got hard. Reading that, I'm also frozen. I knew I had to get out of there as fast as I could, but the only way out of my room was to go through the line of shadow people and run down through the small hallway and then down the stairs. So I took a quick breath and I just bolted straight out of the room and right into the line of shadow people. I had no choice. It was now or never. So I bolted as fast as I could across the room, out of the door, into the line of shadow figures, and as I passed through them, I felt like time had slowed down, and I could now hear the mumbling whispers of the shadow people right next to my ear. It was loud, and I felt as though their whispers were in my head as I went through them. And I remember the feeling that it was like cutting through something heavy, almost sticky. Like if I hadn't run as fast as I had, I might have been stuck to one of them and then dragged into my brother's room.
Oh.
I escaped down the stairs and I didn't tell anyone what I saw. I was traumatized and I just wanted to forget it all, but the shadow people wouldn't let me forget about what happened anytime soon. After the incident, the shadow people began following me everywhere and laughing and taunting me. Whether it was at school, out to eat, nowhere was safe. I finally broke down one day and I told my mother everything. I was expecting my mom to blow it off like my dad did, but instead she knew exactly what I was talking about and what we had to do to get rid of them.
Oh, meaning she probably experienced it.
Right? Turns out maybe she did learn a bit from her mom.
She learned but didn't want it.
Right. I had figured that my dad had told her that I was beginning to see these things, but she was shocked and she was mad when she discovered that I had been suffering for so long. Let's just say that she gave my dad a good talking to about keeping that information to himself, LOL. After I told my mom, we had a family meeting where my brother learned of the horrors that I had seen. My older brother was terrified and he immediately threw out all of the dark movies, the books, etc. We later had our house blessed and I hadn't seen or heard any shadow people since. As time went on, I tried to get back to normal and just forget about them, but I just had so many unanswered questions. Why were these shadow people torturing me and not my brother if he was the one that liked the darker stuff more than I did? Why were they coming out of my dad's office and then going to my brother's room? Did someone or something order them to enter my brother's bedroom? What the hell did they do in my brother's bedroom? And why were there so many of them? Lastly, and the most important question I had was, why didn't the shadow man hurt me? I was an easy target that was literally trapped in the corner of my room. It just didn't add up. For years after, I thought back to what had happened, and I was so traumatized by the event, I refused to enter my brother's room because I still felt like I was being watched. I always closed the doors to my dad's office and to my brother's room, and I don't know why, but I just hated the color red after seeing those glowing red eyes. Oh, sorry that we put red in the background of this video.
I'm not.
I always hated the color red after seeing the glowing red eyes peer into my soul. I felt like I was crazy and a freak for being able to see these monsters and that no one would understand, and I'm so thankful that I was wrong about that. I didn't get the validation that I needed till my mother told me that the year after the event occurred, my maternal grandmother came to visit and stayed in my brother's room. She decided to take a nap one afternoon and laid down in my brother's bed to drift off to sleep. Apparently, when she woke up, she found a shadow man in a hat staring down at her with red eyes. Unfazed, like the badass she is, she told him that he was not welcome in this house and to leave her alone so that she could finish her nap. She then rolled over and went back to sleep. When she finished her nap, the hat man was gone. Thank you, ladies, so much for reading my very long story and for creating such a safe space and accepting place for all of us spooky people to enjoy. I have so many more stories. I will surely start typing them away. Happy October. I'll see you on the other side. Kaylani.
I'm curious if Kaylani's grandmother did anything cleansing or ritual-wise after her nap. Because clearly now she knows there's some shadow figure with red glowing eyes in the house, and he has a troop. Is he collecting souls?
Yeah, it's weird that they're like marching. Like it's very orderly.
Because they're in a line. They obey him in a way. Which I also, the way she described walking through them, to me, I'm like, she truly walked through another dimension that exists that we just haven't been able to study.
Oh, yeah.
And she felt the warp,
like stuck. It's so creepy because that's something we haven't heard. Feeling the stickiness, like you're going to, if you don't move quickly through it, you're going to be stuck in the mud and drawn in.
Quicksand. See, you do have to be afraid of quicksand after all.
It's in shadow person form.
I am curious why they're in her brother's room, although maybe they are getting power from his room because he's watching so many things and like exploring a lot of the darker matters.
But it is interesting. Again, it's kind of like the first story that you just read too, where it's like the person who's not actually doing the stuff is the one getting haunted. So it's like, why didn't her brother experience more? Why wasn't he waking up to the shadow figures?
Listen, Kaylani, based on your maternal grandmother and the abilities that she has, maybe it's passed down through generations and you are the lucky chosen one.
I'm glad though that Kaylani's mom was like, you know, as mad as she was that all of this was happening and that they were dabbling with some of the dark, which is probably based on their familial line and based on their grandmother expelling so much darkness.
Sure.
They're probably on a list somewhere in the darker dimension where they're like,
oh, we know
this
them.
Family.
We know Kaylani's family.
I'm glad that the mom was receptive enough to be like, oh my God, we got to just take care of business.
Yeah.
I don't even have to be like mad at you and punish you. I'm mad that this is happening to you.
Right.
Let's get rid of it.
Your crow's a little lopsided.
Oh, hello. Where are you peeking?
What's your crow's name?
Petunia.
Petunia?
Yes.
Hello,
named after
beautiful.
my favorite frog.
Hello, beautiful.
La 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 la.
We love our crows here. Yes.
It's just all good crow things here.
Oh my gosh, I have so many stories to tell you. I've been doing research on my house and I found, I want to tell you everything. Found a couple, but I want to tell you in an episode that we're recording.
Okay.
Like a regular episode because it's like a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay.
There are birds. Birds are involved in the history of the home.
I'm so confused by this.
I know.
Like a pigeon keeper?
Yeah.
No freaking way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool. You have to do it again.
Aunt Polly.
Bring it back.
I'll tell. Oh, you want me to start having pigeons?
Yes.
Okay. Her name is Aunt Polly.
Aunt Polly?
Aunt Polly.
She kept
the
pigeons?
Pigeon keeper. Polly and her
collect
pigeons.
all the pigeons in Boston. I know exactly where they are.
Okay.
We'll bring them back to their
house.
Glory, which is being pets for humans.
I wonder if there are like any like corpses of pigeons that I'll find.
Oh God, maybe.
She had thousands.
Maybe that's what the mound is in your backyard.
There is a body buried beneath the ground. I'm going to read this story from Witchy, and I am scared by it.
Oh, okay. If you're scared by it, then I'm going to be terrified by it.
And sorry.
Oh, should we set intentions?
Yeah.
Let's not let my basement get haunted.
Okay.
It's already haunted by mice. So.
Exactly. We don't need more hauntings here. Okay. So we'll set intentions for all of you and for us. We are protecting ourselves in a bubble of light and positivity.
I'm trying to like do the ribbon wrapping.
Like doing the witchcraft right there.
Just envision it.
Nothing negative or evil or with ill intent is welcome here. Or welcome to follow us home, to infiltrate our dreams. Nothing. This is a place of safety. We are protected with light and love and positivity.
Yes.
Okay. You were really dubious of that.
Well, because I'm like, what the hell is going to be? Yeah.
Okay.
What's going to come from this email?
Well, Richie had a demonic attachment for 16 years.
Jesus Christ, 16 years.
Hello, my favorite ghostesses. I've considered writing this email for 2 years now and figured now was as good as any. My name is Richie, he, him, and I've been listening to the podcast since 2019. I work in a beach town, and in the summertime, my travel time to work is over an hour. So your podcast has kept me busy on many drives and my annual drive from New York City to Maryland. So thank you for all you do. Now, to the story, and trigger warning for all of you who are listening, there are mentions of abuse, assault, mental illness, and suicidal tendencies. I was a very temperamental child. I have autism, and I didn't speak until I was 4. When I turned 6, my behavioral issues got to a worrisome level, and my mom decided to start medicating me. I was on Adderall for a while and some other ADHD medications. And then eventually, I was on antidepressants, antipsychotics, and anti-anxiety anger meds. I've been diagnosed with several mental illnesses, and as a kid, I was very angry. Rage was the word thrown around a lot. I had my own punching bag in the house. My door was removed from its hinges because I slammed it too much. And I had broken 2 or 3 pairs of glasses because I threw them at the wall. As an adult, I'm pretty ashamed of this behavior. But at the time, it just seemed like I was an angry kid. Oh, how naive we all were.
Yeah.
As I grew up, my relationship with my mother was tumultuous. She was emotionally abusive and controlling. She never approved of the fact that I was bisexual, and when I came out as trans at 15, I was pushed back in the closet until I was 25. When I was 23, I moved halfway across the country to live with my then girlfriend. And I decided to, and please none of you do this, I decided to quit all of my medications cold turkey.
Oh, man.
And I got
It always seems like a good
sick.
idea, right?
Yeah.
Like you convince yourself that you feel better so you don't need it, but that's...
Don't do it.
Don't do that.
Richie says I got very, very sick. The medication hadn't made anything better, just the same all the time, which was a baseline of depressed and borderline suicidal. So I was never good, but it was not as bad as usual. And I wanted to experience life without medication that I had been on for so long. And I'm just saying, I'm not anti-medication. I think it works. And for me personally, it just wasn't. And that's okay. However, I was in a new state, in a new town, and there was no overbearing, abusive mother and no medication. And my mental health was improving. I began to smile again. I wasn't sleeping all the time. I didn't want to stay in the house and do nothing all day. And I was going out and trying to meet new people. And I got a job, and then I got a second job. And then I met my girlfriend's family, and we had dinner together, and we saw each other frequently. And
these are all good things.
A whole new world.
Yeah.
A bright and sunshiny world that I had never experienced before. But these good things came to an end. What did you just look at?
I'm just checking for mice on the pipes.
Oh, okay.
I'm nervous.
Years prior, when I was on Prozac, I had night terrors. And after I was taken off of it, they stopped. So at this point in my life, I had not had night terrors in over 3 years. But then, out of nowhere, I started having them again. And that was why it was so terrifying. I kept having the same night terror, night after night. I was lying in bed, and I would end up on my back, of course. I'd open my eyes and have no control over my body or my mouth. So I would just lay there in panic, in silence, until my limbs and vocal cords got the memo. Every night, I'd wake up. And sitting on the top of the rat cage in the corner of our bedroom would be this thing. It wasn't really sitting either, more like contorted in the corner.
Ew.
Folding itself in a way that humans do not fold nor bend.
I'm concerned for the rat. Was the rat okay?
I mean, I'm concerned for everyone.
That's true.
It was a huge black mass with long arms and legs and very distinct shaped head. Its head was almost like a mask, straight across the top with a very, very tiny point in the middle and sloped sides that came to a point where the chin would be. So weird. It's like very angular.
Right. Yes. It almost feels like a mask too, like in some of those scary movies.
For a week or so, I would wake up to see this thing staring at me, growling as if it was hungry.
Ew.
And I was starving it. I knew, I could feel it. It was hungry and it was insatiable and it had been feeding off of me for years. But now its stomach had turned up empty and it was hungry and it was mad at me. It was an innate knowledge. It wasn't said to me. It wasn't said out loud or even communicated mentally. It was just something I knew in my bones, to my core, that I was starving this entity and it had been feasting on inside of me for years of my life. The day before I started seeing this entity, I had posted a story to my Snapchat story saying how happy I was and how I wasn't depressed anymore. I wasn't anxious or angry or sad. But after that week of terrors, night terrors, I finally told my then girlfriend. I didn't want to. But on that fateful 7th night of night terrors, I had woken up screaming at the top of my lungs. And I knew I had to get out.
Yeah.
We called her mother right away, who went to one of the local reservations to get some materials to sage. And later that day, we got to work.
Good.
I don't remember much of what happened. Over the week, I had spent watching it stare at me, and I had come to learn its name, Ronnie. This was a heavily featured name in my life. All for bad reasons. No wonder I felt so attached to my abusive ex of the same name, Ronnie. Ronnie was a demon, and when I was 6, it became attached to me, hence the sudden rage within my body and soul at 6 years old. For 16 years, I had unknowingly fed this demon. I was depressed, suicidal, and I had been assaulted at this point multiple times.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
I had been struggling with disordered eating as well. I was a buffet of negative emotion, one that was constantly being replenished. And for the first time in 16 years, the employees closed down and stopped refilling the trays. That demon had no negative energy to feed on. It was weak, and now it was deciding to show itself to me, thinking that that fear would be enough to feed it again. If I was scared, I would be sad and then depressed. But it made a mistake. I was not a quitter, and I wasn't scared. Not anymore. I knew its name, I knew its game, and I was ending it. I wasn't going to play anymore. I wasn't going to let my life go back to what it had been. I was finally doing better, and I was going to stay that way. As I said, I don't remember much, but I know I fought, and I fought hard for 40 minutes, which is astonishingly short given what happened.
It feels so long, though, to fight for that long, for 40 minutes straight.
Right.
Where you don't have breaks. You're very consciously fighting.
Right. But when you think of exorcisms and all of those types of fights against demons, they seem like they are multiple sessions and hours.
Many days. Yes.
So there was no exorcism or big ritual. Ronnie was weak and starving, and the sage was powerful enough to rip him from my soul. He fought, but I fought harder, and I won. 2 weeks later, my then girlfriend unfortunately assaulted me, and I packed up all my things, stayed in a hotel for 3 days, and then flew back to Maryland. I was upset, but I didn't fall back into depression or anger. Once I was back at my mother's home, we had a huge fight, which ended with me being admitted to the psych ward for a week. Since then, other things have happened, but I have come out on top every time. I'm now 27. I'm only on hormones as medication. I'm engaged to the man of my dreams and have a lovely little apartment with a lovely little cat named Bibble. Oh,
Bibble.
I'm finally in a loving, healthy relationship. And while I still struggle with depression sometimes, like everyone, I still get sad. I haven't been fully depressed in years, and I haven't been depressed since before Ronnie left. I'm doing so much better now, and while my time in a different state wasn't very long and ended very badly, I'm still happy I went. If I had never moved out there for a girl I barely knew, I might still be in my hoarder depression room rotting away, Ronnie feasting on me. Thank you for reading and listening. I have more stories, like the ghost Natalie, who lives in my dad's house, and Maria, the ghost in my mom's house.
Oh my God.
Or the ghost that connects me and my best friend, and then also the ghost in my best friend's ex's house.
Oh my God.
See you on the other side, and hopefully every side, Richie.
Richie. Okay, I think that we just have to recognize how incredibly strong Richie is.
Yeah.
For how much has happened and how much they've gone through.
To not know that you are being taunted and tormented by something like this for 16 years.
And also just the development phase of anyone, but especially the things that Richie was going through to find themselves and kind of the direction that they wanted to take their lives. That's such a hard period of time anyway. And we've talked about when people are hormonal and teenagers and in that phase of life. And there's so many death of self moments that happen 100%. Between your year age 10 and age 25.
Yeah.
That of course they were a target.
Right. I'm also curious because it sounds like Richie believes that this entity, Ronnie, I feel like I shouldn't. Well, no, I'm not afraid of him. Fuck you, Ronnie. Splash some holy water on you. I'm curious what at 6 years old brought this entity towards Richie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, was there something that happened in Richie's life?
Yeah.
Did they go somewhere?
Right.
You know, I mean, or was it just like wandering around and was like, you look tasty.
Perfect person. Yeah. I'm also so curious if Richie looked at their astrocartography chart, what it would say, because there was, I don't know where Richie is now, if they've returned to the same town where they first grew up, or if they're somewhere different with their love of their life.
Mm-hmm.
But it does make me curious, like what lines, if there'll be like a lot of hardships or whatever, like if it does match up, and then if it's easy breezy, beautiful peace.
Cover girl.
Right now. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, cover girl.
Yeah. I actually recently looked at my astrocartography what we did with Ariel Willow, and it is a little overwhelming. There's so many different lines that I was like trying to remember what was what, and then
that's why I like doing that episode, because I needed Ariel to tell us what everything was.
Hold our hands.
Help us
through this. But Richie, I'm so glad that you are in a much better place in your life, and truly fuck Ronnie.
Fuck Ronnie.
You said it in such a delicate way.
Because I'm scared. But also it was just making me think of Jersey Shore.
Oh, like Ronnie and Sam?
Yeah, I immediately just thought of the letter that they write to Sam. The letter that Snooki and JWoww write, where they're like trying to be anonymous, but tell Sam that Ronnie like made out with a girl at the club or whatever.
See, I don't remember the details.
Okay, but I have another email that was sent. And this is called The Thing That Lives in My Father's House and the Black Cat.
I hope it's a good black cat.
I know, right? Or maybe the cat is the bad thing.
Well, then it's not a cat.
Did you know
what?
That cats can't differentiate? Here's another fact that I'm going to tell you that I just saw on the internet. Did absolutely no research to like back it up. I'm just regurgitating. I'm parroting everything I hear.
Great.
So like dogs will recognize, and like elephants will recognize humans as a different species. And there's something in their brain that will trigger and be like, oh, that's so cute. Like we look at a dog and we're like, that's so cute.
Mm-hmm.
And dogs will look at us and be like, so cute. And the elephants will look at us and be like, so cute. Cats don't recognize us as a different species. They can't differentiate all the time between them. So they're just thinking that we're dumb, that we're like the worst cats to ever cat.
Well, I've heard that they see humans as, but then they also know how to manipulate us. So they have to know.
Us. Yeah, because they think we're dumb.
But they domesticated themselves because they realized that humans would give them food if they hunted the mice.
Mm.
But then they also hunt. So like they can differentiate. They know like a mouse is not another cat.
Right. I don't know. But apparently with humans, they don't.
Like, why is this shaking? But
it's me. I just keep hitting it. Yeah, we can't have a repeat of the flame of 2022? October 2022.
Wait, can we try something?
No.
Wait, it's not going to be scary. I want to try something witchy.
Okay.
So what I want to try is to channel our energy and focus on one of the candles and try to make the flame rise.
Okay, which one?
Well, we have to hold hands. Let's do this one.
All right.
Stop. You have to keep focusing. Witchcraft doesn't happen in minutes.
We're also on a podcast. Later. That's what I was thinking. Like, we should just practice this. And then eventually one day we'll be able to do it.
Okay.
As a trick.
What were you thinking about?
I was literally telling it to rise. I was like, straighten up. Rise.
I was doing, okay, maybe we have to get our mental thoughts synced. I was first saying, I'm channeling all my energy into you, candle, like receive it. And then I was doing.
Oh, interesting. You're probably doing it better than me.
We don't know anything.
Yeah, no. I was just like, I see you rise. I envision you rise. You're rising. You're getting straight.
Maybe we have to close our eyes next time. We'll try it again later when we're not recording.
Yes. On to Kirby's email. Hi, I love the podcast. Thank you so much for creating a space to share personal experiences with the supernatural and otherwise spooky. Listening to it has made me think a lot about the things that I went through as a kid, but until about a week ago, I never fully understood what happened to me. I'll try to summarize as much as I can to keep this story concise, but it is an experience that lasted the course of my entire life. The backstory is that
How old is Kirby now? Is it still lasting?
It must be. I don't know. The backstory is that about a year ago, I moved out of my home state of Iowa with my mother and my sister to a close suburb of Denver, Colorado. My parents have been divorced for about 15 years, so being away from my dad wasn't an issue. As kids, my siblings and I went back and forth between our parents daily in a shared custody agreement, but things fell apart between me and my father when I was a teenager, so I haven't lived with him or been in his house for about 7 years, despite him technically being in my life. The house he owns is my childhood home, an old acreage off of the gravel road, surrounded by nothing but cornfields with no real close neighbors to speak of, except for my grandfather across the road. Isn't Iowa the corn state too? I think it is. It's corn everywhere. Being alone in the house at night or being outside after dark always filled me with literal fear, like the fear of death. It feels like something standing over your shoulders, hands hovering just above your skin, waiting to get you if you don't run away right fucking now. I was terrified of looking out the windows there at night, to the point that I pinned the curtains of my room closed so I wouldn't have to worry about accidentally looking out. I felt watched.
Jeez.
If I was anywhere alone at night, that darkness would come over me, and I would run as fast or as far as I could to the nearest living thing, and only then would I feel safe. As I got older and I learned about mental illness, I explained this away as a symptom of anxiety, which I do deal with in other aspects of my life. After moving to Colorado and into an apartment built in the last decade, I stopped being afraid at night completely.
Clearly, that's like the entire atmosphere then of the place.
Right. Yeah.
It's scary.
It is scary. I'm so curious what the other siblings and family members felt out here too. Even now, I can get up whenever I want without fear. I could never have started listening to your podcast before I moved, especially not at night, but now I'm completely fine. I thought my anxiety had gotten more rational with age, even though I still deal with it on a daily basis. I had a spiritual awakening after moving that I used to protect myself from darkness whenever I feel it. It wasn't until earlier this August, when my dad flew me and my sister back to stay with him and see my family for 10 days, that I was able to understand what had been happening all this time. 3 days into our trip, I woke up out of a dead sleep at 4 a.m, filled with that familiar dread. Like
immediately.
Yes. It felt like I'd been doused in ice water or spooked awake by someone shouting or jumping at me. I wasn't staying in my childhood bedroom because the only air conditioning was in the living room, one of the places that I felt the darkness often as a kid whenever I was alone in there. I reverted to what I had always done, curling up in a blanket and forcing myself to go back to sleep. And I realized, staying in that house for the first time in 7 years, that my childhood fears were more than just blanket anxiety. Most of my experiences in the house revolve around a dark force and the image of a black cat who watched me at night.
Oh, I'm sad.
All of the kids' rooms were on the second level of this house. My parents would leave the door open at night so that they could hear if something went on in one of our rooms at the bottom of the stairs. Every night, without fail, I'd be able to see the outline of a black cat staring at me from my doorway. Its golden eyes were the knobs on the linen cabinet in the hall, but I would also see its body and tail around me at night as it followed me through the house. I would watch the black cat watching me in the darkness as I tried to sleep, and the dread and the fear would come over me until I could do nothing but hide my body completely under the blankets. I hate having my feet covered, but leaving them out was worse.
Way worse.
And I try to think of anything else until I fall asleep, and I would be terrified. I was afraid of the black cat, even though I think it was either holding back something worse or it was a form that I interpreted the darkness to be. I never told my parents about any of this beyond asking if one of the outdoor cats could have gotten loose in the house, because we had many cats over the years, but never completely black ones. In the memories of the dark entity, I was always numb with fear and completely pinned by it. I grew accustomed to it, and being a child, I would easily forget during the day. But at night, the idea of getting out of bed and having to run down the stairs to get my parents was a whole lot scarier than just staying safe in my bed where it, quote unquote, couldn't get me. At this point, I'm unsure whether the cat was a guardian spirit who watched over me in my childhood.
We're going with that.
Or an image of a dark entity which the guardian kept at bay. I had other interactions with my guardian in my dreams up until my spiritual awakening, which I might tell you about in a separate email, but I assumed until returning home that the black cat was a spirit watching over me. But now reflecting on this memory, I'm not so sure. What used to be my scariest supernatural experience and the most concrete experience that I had as a child in this house was a night where my sister was sleeping in the bed with me. We might have been like 8 or 6, possibly a little younger. Being a good older sibling, I let her sleep on the inside of the bed between me and the wall. It must have been a full moon with the blinds up because the middle of the room was bathed with a patch of bright moonlight, making it easy to see a shadowy blur run from the hall, beyond my door, all the way across the room and underneath my bed. Terrified, but numb, I watched and I waited to see if it would come out. And after a minute, the shadow ran at the same speed out from under the bed and into the hallway. It does seem cat-like.
It does seem very cat-like.
After a minute, the shadow appeared again, a blur that traveled low to the ground through the moonlight to disappear under my bed again. And at this point, I shook my sister and I got her to watch it for me. And sure enough, after a few seconds, it ran back out and into the hallway and she could see it too. We watched it run in and out, feeling the pressure build and too afraid to do anything but whisper to each other. It ran out and then it ran in, faster and faster, both of us knowing something was going to happen but too scared to look away. The shadow ran out one last time and then it never came back. What ran back in was twice the size that it had been. The family dog, a border collie that ran at top speed into my room and it jumped into my bed. My sister and I were so relieved and we convinced ourselves that it must have been her so we wouldn't have to tell our dad what happened. Except that even that explanation didn't make any sense. Right. Abby, the dog, never came upstairs at night unless we were with her and never did this again for the rest of her life. She never slept with us. She disliked being on the furniture at all besides her own dog pillow in the corner of the kitchen. My second issue was the height of my bed, maybe 6 inches off the ground, so low that it would have never been able to fit her under it, even in my earliest memories. A toddler, a cat, a small dog might have been able to wriggle underneath it, but a medium-sized dog like a border collie would really struggle to fit. The shadow had run under and out without even having to slow down. I believe now that Abby could sense or hear us panicking upstairs and ran up to protect us, but I'm not really sure.
Or it could have been like, I'm going to go with the cat being protective because if the cat was the evil entity, in my mind, wouldn't it have then jumped on Kirby? Or like, I feel like it was just observing for the most part and just there. Yeah. And then that action seems very cat-like it's chasing something or it's scared.
Right. And then the dog could have been scared too.
Right.
Because it makes me think of in my parents' house, the ghost dog, the only time anyone in my actual family has seen it, aside from all the other people who've just observed it, was when the ghost dog was scared of another thing in the house and ran and jumped on my parents' bed. And my mom thought it was our dog until our dog came out and was like, what's happening?
What's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Safe with the dog, both my sister and I held onto her collar as we went downstairs to sleep with our parents for the rest of the night. This is the story I recounted to my father's long-term girlfriend, one of those last nights during our stay in my father's house this past August. We were both in tears as she told me how afraid she was whenever she was alone in the house, just like I was. On 2 other occasions, psychically aware friends of the family had mentioned the thing as an angry old farmer, and she described it the same way that they had. This was the first time either of us had ever discussed it, and as we did in our living room at night, she said she felt safe while I was pretending not to feel it there in the room with us. I kept feeling light touches all over my skin as I sat there talking to her, and I tried envisioning wrapping a ribbon from the crown of my head slowly around every inch of my body to ward away any unwanted sensations, but it was completely ineffective. Neither of us tried to sleep until the sun came up. The 2 nights that followed were the real experience of the worst nightmare I could ever imagine.
It gets worse?
Yes.
Oh, no. Never go to this house again.
I know. Jeez.
Move.
Yeah, have your dad come visit you.
Yeah.
It's a one-way street now. The dream was my greatest fear through all of life. It had been listening to us talk, and it was angry. I was on the verge of sleep in my own living room with my sister 5 feet away on the couch when the entity woke me up like it had earlier in the week, like someone pulling the rug out from under you. It enveloped me, bearing down on my chest and my legs with all of its force and its dark anger, touching me everywhere with more light but very real sensations.
I don't like that.
Unlike in my childhood, things I've learned since my spiritual awakening have made me being able to cope with all of this, like how to tell the difference between minor hallucinations and reality, as well as understanding my relationship with God. I was relying heavily on that belief that the dark force had been human once, feeding on fear to fuel its anger and tormenting anyone who stayed up past dark on its territory. I was sure that as long as I refused to let it scare me, it would eventually leave me alone. So I prayed, naming myself a vessel of light and righteousness, and I felt grace fill me as I reached out. This had never failed to banish any dark forces that I had encountered outside of that house. It helped alleviate some of the fear and the panic momentarily, but the obsessive force remained pressing on my chest, and it refused to go away. Anytime I got near sleep, it would spook me awake again, over and over, until I just gave up trying. I prayed against it for hours, but nothing helped. I even turned on the lamp, and I left it on, but the dark pressure stayed, and the touches on my body just wouldn't stop. I forced myself to get up and walk across the house to the bathroom, trying to insist that it was only playing with my senses to make me afraid and to feed on that fear.
Right.
The best way I can describe the feeling of the attack is in a scene from the Blair Witch Project. Like being inside a tent in the middle of the woods at night while something outside is battering it from all angles, unable to get inside, but definitely inescapable and relentless in its efforts to get in. No matter what I did or where I went, it was on me. It was attacking me. I kept convincing myself I was safe from it and that it couldn't actually hurt me, but I've never been more afraid in my life.
Yeah, because it's also like not changing its tactics or becoming more intense or less intense. It is just like a constant.
Stuck to you. It's giving me the chills thinking about this. Ooh, I feel so cold. Eventually, I squished in with my sister on the couch and I slept in a haze the last hour until dawn, praying myself to sleep while it scared me awake again and again. I wasn't worried about it the next night. We were supposed to leave at 1:30 in the morning to drive to Minneapolis for our flight home, and I expected to stay up packing my bags until then. I was sitting in the living room with my brother, dozing, and my sister awake on her phone, when 3 loud-ass footsteps came up from the entryway, entering the living room, and immediately I was attacked again. I was less afraid this time because my sister was awake and I didn't ask her if she could sense it out of the fear that it would turn its attention to her. So I stayed on my phone. I refused to give it any attention, but the pressure remained on my chest again until it suddenly went away an hour or so into the attack. I heard 2 more loud stomps in the entryway and then it left. And thank God, it seems like it hasn't followed me home, but I will never forget what happened.
And I hope you never go back there.
I know. I don't know what that thing is in my dad's house. A demon should have been able to cause me greater harm than just spooking me.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't think something that was human once could resist such banishment and prayer. We're going back next June to stay again.
No!
So I guess I'll let you know. This was in August of 2019.
So you've been back, Kirby.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'll let you know if anything ends up happening. Dad's girlfriend now sages. So hopefully that's enough to handle this trip. See you on the other side, Kirby.
It's almost like that feeling, you know, when you've killed a spider or a bug or bugs and like you just feel like there's like you feel dirty and you feel like you need to wash yourself because it feels like they're still on you or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that sensation constantly. Like I'm imagining like soft little touches and then like anxiety pressure.
Right. Yeah, like something really heavy on your chest. And it does feel like the bug thing. Like I'm feeling it right now. Where it's probably just like my hair touching my back, but I feel like I'm feeling what Kirby was feeling.
Yeah. And for it to be accompanied with the stomping and the stepping. Where's the ghost cat? If the ghost cat's guardian, where's the ghost cat now? And also Kirby, I want to hear about your spiritual awakening and what's happened and how maybe that's helped protect you. And maybe Kirby's spiritual awakening and ability to, it sounded like Kirby said that they spoke with their guardian a couple times. Maybe that was enough to keep whatever entity this was at bay. Mm-hmm. Yes, it was still impacting Kirby, but it wasn't attacking in a really negative way.
Can you imagine, though, being attacked and like literally feeling like you're being attacked in a room full of people where people are awake? Like even Kirby communicating with their dad's girlfriend was feeling and sensing this thing around them, but didn't want to draw attention to it because it's like Kirby put so much effort into not letting it know that they were fearful or that they could sense it. But like, there's other people consciously. Right.
It knew. You don't
it's so isolating to like be there and experience that. And like, you don't want to draw attention to it.
I am curious. So psychic people who've gone to the house said it was an old farmer who lived or who was haunting the house. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a lot of farmland. I'm curious if you could find out more. I mean, not that does anything, but I'm more of a, like, I'm curious from my own point of view.
Is it the farmer's cat? It's just like around?
I don't know.
It's hard to figure out what the cat is because the cat feels like a cat, but the cat also comes with the anxiety and dread.
Right. But is it the cat or is it the cat is there because that anxiety and dread and is trying to like help kind of be the symbol of like, this thing is here. I'm going to stand here at your door.
Right. That's what I wanted. The spiritual embodiment of what the border collie was trying to do.
Right. Ah.
Spooky.
Spooky ooky.
Spooky Halloween.
Well, we do have to go back to eating our brains.
Yes.
Sorry you can't join us for that.
It's getting moist and mushy.
It's marinated.
And sticky. Oh, look at that goo. Tasty, delicious.
Yummy.
Yummy.
And we're going to get back to manifesting and working on our witch powers.
What was the crow? He died.
Oh,
Petunia. Join us.
We'll nurse you back to hell.
Did you say we'll nurse you back to hell?
Health.
Oh.
I like that.
But maybe.
We'll nurse you back to hell.
The crowing. The crows have eyes too.
And thank you all for joining us. Mm-hmm. If you have any ghost stories that you would like to share with us to be read on the podcast, please email them to us at twogirlsoneghostpodcast@gmail.com. And you could also, if you want to share it live with us, you can join us on Campfire Stories live every Tuesday on Patreon. It's only $5 a month and you get all episodes 1 week early, ad-free. You get a bonus episode every month and book club and Campfire Stories every Tuesday.
And a lot more.
A whole lot more.
Shout out to Jamie Ryan, who edits our audio and video, produces our podcast. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jamie.
And thank you to all of you.
Peace and blessings and happy hauntings. And we will see you on the other side.
Hey, my pretties.